Back again on the Sports Zone. I am Mike Aglialoro. We're finally going to finish this NFL series going division by division, looking at every team's offseason improvements made thus far and the needs that they still have to fill. We're finishing up with arguably the toughest division in football right now, the NFC West. Now, of course, the real Super Bowl, in everybody's opinion, was the San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks won that. This division is still every bit as tough as ever, and it's still going to be every bit as difficult for Seattle to try to defend their crown this year. We're going to start the bottom of this division. We're going to go with the St. Louis Rams. Now, as much as the St. Louis Rams have been the last place team in this division for the better part of the last 5 years, finishing at 7-9 in this division is an achievement in my eyes. And they come into this draft still reaping the benefits of trading the number 2 pick in the draft that led to Robert Griffin III to the Washington Redskins. They have 2 picks in the first round, and while my buddy Aaron got a little creative with his pick of Johnny Manziel, the trade, it's going to be very interesting to see what they do in this year's draft. They didn't really lose that much. They lost a pretty good offensive lineman to Buffalo, Chris Williams, to Buffalo. They lost another one to Miami and Shelley Smith, and they parted ways with Cortland Finnegan. They were able to sign defensive tackle Alex Carrington from Buffalo, and they also made the big splash by bringing in Kenny Britt, who did begin his career under Jeff Fisher in Tennessee. They added him to a wide receiving core that we know has never really been that good. Tavon Austin showed some nice flashes last year. Chris Givens is a decent receiver, but they need a lot of weapons. And they were able to take advantage of the Oakland Raiders' blunder and re-sign Roger Safford, who it looked like he was going to go to the Raiders, and then after a botched physical, the Rams got him back and he could play either guard or tackle. So as they go into this season, still not really sure if Sam Bradford is the future for them. In terms of what I feel they should address in the draft, you need help on that offensive line. Doesn't matter if it's Sam Bradford or whoever it could be, maybe Johnny Manziel. This is still among one of the worst offensive lines in the game, and Bradford gets hurt every year in part because he's getting harassed and killed on every damn play, and that has to change. You have a couple decent cogs there. You need more, particularly at the guard and center position. They, like I said, even though Britt could be good, I would look for them to add a legitimate number 1 receiver to someone who could be just like Percy Harvin, one of those little X-Factor guys you just move around the field, but you need a number 1 to complement him, and they could look to address wide receiver with either their 2nd pick in the first round or their 2nd round draft pick. They might look to add a little depth at the running back position. As much as Zach Stacy looked great at times last season, he may or may not be the running back of the future for them. Another option wouldn't hurt anything. And I look for them to add to that secondary. They keep adding to that every year. They added Janarius Jenkins last year, but they did lose Cortland Finnegan, either a cornerback or a safety they're going with. And they could use some depth along that defensive line. They are very solid up front, but a little bit behind them just in case worse happens to Robert Quinn, Chris Long, or Michael Brockers, and they're in trouble. We're going to move along to the team that, in my opinion, improved the most in this division. That's the Arizona Cardinals. They finished at 10-6 last season, and they still missed the playoffs. That's how good this division is. And their biggest weakness was that offensive line. Now, they're getting last year's first-round pick, Jonathan Cooper, back off of injury. He's a guard. He missed the entire season last year in the first week of the season. And they signed the best lineman available in this year's free agency crop in Jared Veldheer from the Raiders, filling huge voids for them. Now, they did lose Andre Roberts, their 3rd wide receiver. They replaced him with Ted Ginn Jr., much more versatile. He's going to help in the return game, and he's going to be a solid 3rd wide receiver for Carson Palmer. They did add a backup to Andre Ellington after Rashard Mendenhall retired in Jonathan Dwyer. And they also were able to add a center in Ted Larson, formerly of the Tampa Bay Bucks. They had a tight end, John Carlson of the Minnesota Vikings. And lastly, they were able to add Antonio Cromartie to a secondary that already has Patrick Peterson and Tyrann Mathieu when he's healthy. The only major losses they had was an aging Carlos Dansby, who they were prepared to lose. They let Javier Arenas and Antoine Cason go, and like I said, they lost Andre Roberts. So as they enter this year's draft, I still look for them to add more on that offensive line. Veldheer and Cooper coming back are nice, but Cooper missed an entire season of play, and he's still a rookie. Add one more. They need help on their front seven. They are very solid on the line with Calais Campbell and Darnell Dockett. I look for them to at least try to add one outside linebacker. I look for them to do something at safety, and they need a pass-catching tight end. They're great at wide receiver with Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd, but Carson Palmer could use a short yard presence outside of Andre Ellington, who's only in his second year, undersized, and you don't know if he's going to hold up for the season. We're going to move to the San Francisco 49ers. The biggest story of the 49ers offseason was the possible controversy between Jim Harbaugh and the front office after it was reported that the front office thought about possibly trading him for a Cleveland Browns first-round draft pick. But everything seems somewhat okay heading into the draft. The major losses for the 49ers, though, were on the secondary. They lost Terrell Brown and Dante Whitner, both to the Oakland Raiders, and then they lost the safety Dante Whitner to the Cleveland Browns. They were able to sign Antoine Bethea, far and away the better safety there, from the Indianapolis Colts. They brought in Chris Cook and Parrish Cox to try to help out a cornerback. And the two trades they made were big news. They brought in Jonathan Martin, the tackle, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, and they brought in the bust Blaine Gabbert to back up Colin Kaepernick at quarterback. So obviously no one's expecting Gabbert to even play it down this season. It'll be interesting to see what Martin can do. He's obviously going to start as a bench player, may not even suit up some weeks. But if they can actually get something out of him in that division where they still have to go up against the Seahawks, anything they can get to stop their front seven is going to help them. So that was a big move, at least in my eyes. As they enter the draft, what I look for them to address is the right side of their offensive line. They need a deep threat at wide receiver. They lost Mario Manningham this offseason, and as much as Anquan Bolden and Michael Crabtree are really good wide receivers, they don't really have a lot of speed there. I look for them to address that with the deep receiving crop. They need some youth at cornerback after what they lost this offseason, and I look for them to do something on the defensive line or the right outside linebacker position in the event they want to create a buffer in case something happens to Aldon Smith. Lastly, we're going to go to the defending champion Seattle Seahawks. The story of the offseason for the Seahawks is how many players they lost in trying to keep together their core. They didn't lose great pieces, but they did lose members of their Legion of Boom secondary, and they did lose quality starters. They lost Golden Tate, the wide receiver, to the Detroit Lions, Clinton McDonald, the defensive tackle, to the Tampa Bay Bucks, Walter Thurman, the best third cornerback in the league by some accounts, to the New York Giants, Brandon Browner, the suspended cornerback, to the New England Patriots, Red Bryant and Chris Clemens, the defensive ends, were both cut, and they went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they lost the offensive tackle Bruno Giacominini, the offensive tackle, to the New York Jets. Now, like I said, these are quality NFL starters, but these are not heavy losses to the Seattle Seahawks, to the point where they were okay with losing these players as long as they were able to re-sign their top defensive lineman, Michael Bennett, as well as defensive tackle Tony McDaniel, who they expect to fill the void left by Red Bryant and Chris Clemens. And they did also sign Cliff Averill, the defensive end, to a contract last season. They also re-signed one of the best safeties in the league in Earl Thomas. As they enter the draft, I look for them to try to do something at wide receiver or tight end if they don't have something in the works with Jermichael Finley, because they did lose Tate, like I said. If Percy Harvin's healthy for a full season, him and Sidney Rice, that's a game changer right there. But a third option would help so you have flexibility in what you do with Harvard. I do look for them to try to get some help on the right side of that offensive line, which is still not a good offensive line. Like I said, I look for them to try to do something at cornerback, and I do look for them to try to get a linebacker or two at some point in the draft. Carroll is one of the best drafters in the game. He's going to take the time to tweak some things, and more than likely there could be a trade or two to get some more late round value. So in closing, once again, toughest division in the league. St. Louis is still at the bottom. Arizona's improved the most. They're still in third. San Francisco is second. And the Seahawks still in first place. Don't forget to check out the 2014 SportsZone NFL mock draft. We did the first round. It's our second annual installment. This year it's myself, Tom Lumbo, Jake Dixon, Aaron Hadasmi, the newest member of the SportsZone family, and Jay Rofsky picking for the Vikings. Like I said, we did the entire first round Monday night. We had a good time. Everybody check out where we think everybody's going to go. And also take a look at the last of Jake Dixon's 2014 NFL Draft preview. This week he did the wide receiver, quarterbacks, and he finished up with 5 late-round sleepers that you could see go on day 3 and have a big impact this coming season. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at WeAreSportsZone. Send us any questions and comments you may have. Thanks for watching, everybody. For This is SportsZone, I am Mike Aglialoro. We will see you next time, folks.